Man, what's poppin', what's poppin'? We are back to talk about something very, very important. Man, what happened to Talonflame? It's been a minute since I did one of these videos. Not really, I just did one last week. But I really wanted to do one about Talonflame. In fact, Talonflame is one of the Pokemon that inspired me to do this whole series to begin with. This mon and Keldeo. Now, Talonflame, we all know back in Generation 6 was one of the biggest threats ever. One of the coolest, most unique Pokemon ever. Man, they used to call it SMOGON BIRD, the way that thing used to terrorize the OU ladder. Everyone hated this mon. Noobs hated this mon. This was like Landers T before Landers T. Even if it wasn't even comparably good, people were always like, SMOGON BIRD this, SMOGON BIRD that. And I was like, damn, did they really complain so much that Game Freak made this thing completely garbage in Gen 7? Or let's kind of look into it, see what it can do, what it could possibly pull off, and basically where has this mon been for the last 3 years, because in Generation 7 it really hasn't made too many moves. But first off, let's just hop right into it. I'll show you guys the main set that is used in Gen 7 OU when it is used. So this is basically it. Swords Dance, Brave Bird, Flare Blitz, Roost. So this is quite a common set that was used in the last generation as well, the offensive set, and we're using Flyanium Z. Now, the move here, so the problem here now with Gale Wings, as we all know, is Gale Wings only activates when you are at full HP, which is such a ridiculous change. It's unfortunate that they nerfed it so heavily, but now Talonflame's priority healing and priority Brave Bird are nerfed pretty heavily. See, a thing with Talonflame was back in the day is that its defenses are pretty mediocre if you're looking at it. 78, 71, and 69. That's pretty horrible. Not to mention it's 4 times weak to Stealth Rock. It's just, you know, in theory, like, it's a pretty horrible Pokemon at its stats, but Gale Wings was such an amazing crutch because it was able to roost up to full HP, outspeed everybody, and with some bulk invested into Talonflame, this thing was actually able to be pretty annoying, especially because considering it has really amazing speed too. But unfortunately, it's gotten rid of that, and now it's really hard for it to make any use of any type of bulk because the lack of priority healing it's just a big step down for what this Pokemon could have done in the past. And in the past, you know, I was running so many bulky sets: Taunt, Roost, Will-O-Wisp, Swords Dance, Bulk Up, like just mono attacking Brave Bird. Even Acrobatics was crazy back in the day. Like, I look back at the Generation 6, so this is the Generation 6 analysis for Talonflame, and you can see this set, Acrobatics, Brave Bird, especially defensive back in the day. I love how it says no item with this sound. This is like on Twitter and YouTube comments when they say that, like, fucking no cap, and they put that emoji and the cap emoji. That's what it reminds me of. That's hilarious. But they even have bulky Swords Dance, which was SD, max attack, max HP. This was the set that Jambad loved to run. This was actually Jam's set, max attack, max HP, and nobody knew about this set until Jam started running it seriously back in ORAS. More often they ran specially defensive or they ran max attack, max speed. This is offensive Swords Dance. This set is a little bit worse these days, but back in the day, you guys remember what a threat this was, because in ORAS in general, Talonflame isn't run too much. Like, look, I go to my Gen 6 OU teams. We can look through Agent 00 La Flame, bro. This is my most recent Talonflame team my buddy X-Ray gave me. As you can see, this is a bit of a Spadef Talonflame, Swords Dance, Brave Bird, Will-O-Wisp, Roost, but in Gen 6 where it's able to get the priority healing, it's very, very nice. So now let's talk about Gen 7. Gen 7, unfortunately, they nerfed this thing. You know, funny enough, I actually had Talonflame used versus me in a tournament game a while back by this dude Mazar. I smashed him, but Talonflame could have been a threat, but it wasn't because it didn't have the priority move. I do like that you can run a Z flying move with Brave Bird, which allows you to really get that nuke off in the first place, and then you don't have to take a recoil, so at least then your next hit you can get off too. So maybe in best case scenario, Talonflame can force like 2 kills, and it does have a really amazing natural speed, which should allow it to outspeed stuff. But let's look at the OU viability rankings, and you can see the type of Pokemon that it has to match up versus in the metagame. So just look at the top Pokemon. Interestingly enough, Heatran and Landers T aren't the best answers, I've realized, because a +2 Z Fly is going to destroy Landers T, and it can hit Heatran very hard as well. Not to mention they need to have a Z move on Landers. I mean, it needs to have Z move or Stone Edge to knock it out. And Heatran is actually walled. I mean, obviously Magma Storm does a lot, Toxic does a lot, but it doesn't have a move that can really one-hit KO. So a +2 Z move can still do a big chunk of damage. Magearna as well. The Assault Vest set is walled. Talonflame gets free roosts on it. Volt Switch doesn't do enough. It probably does like 30-35% while it's roosting, which is cool. I mean, if Talonflame's Gale Wings still worked the way it used to, it would completely wall Magearna. Well, the defensive versions, which is a Volt Switch, which would have been amazing, but unfortunately that's not the case. And then you have other Pokemon that in general are not really able to switch into these flying type moves, but they're pretty low base power, and of course you have to be at full HP. So stuff like Alakazam, Ferrothorn, Garchomp, Kartana, like all these things except for Pax in theory would lose to Talon, because you'd get off a Z Brave Bird, Flare Blitz, etc. Stuff like Celesteela is walled, which is interesting to think about. You know, you could see like Brave Bird, Flare Blitz coverage, like the Tapus, for example, besides Coco, really struggled to switch into a +2 Z Brave Bird. The funny thing is Lele completely walls Talonflame if you're at full HP. I remember I won a battle that way. I walled it. or you don't completely wall it because it has Flare Blitz, but it's not allowed to use its flying type move. So Scarf Lele completely beats Talonflame, which is something interesting, unless they're running Flame Charge instead of Flare Blitz. And this is a set that I've seen in the past. This is actually the set that was used versus me in World Cup when I had to play against this, and just in general, the other move, what's it called? Wait, Flame Charge, sorry. Flame Charge over Flare Blitz, so you get the +1 speed, and then you're more likely to sweep with Brave Bird, because at that point, +1 speed Talonflame. There's not too much that's able to outspeed that. But I think that set is gimmicky. I mean, Talonflame in general is a very gimmicky pick. Like, it's a fun hyper offense type pick. You don't use this thing very seriously, right? So I mean, in general, I mean, Flame Charge kind of makes sense because you're trying to get as much as you can out of it, but I feel like I'd rather run Flare Blitz because, like, at least then my Talonflame can KO Mawile and shit. Like, +2 Flame Charge probably doesn't KO Mawile, which is pathetic. But that's just how it is. Definitely doesn't KO Magirna or any of them. Like, imagine Ferrothorn comes out and you can't kill it, or Magnezone, you can't kill it. So I'd rather just have Flare Blitz. Flame Charge just seems too Flame Charge, you're putting way too many chances on you sweeping with Talonflame. Like, you're putting way too many eggs in that basket or whatever the saying is. It's not going to happen most of the time. But you can look at a lot of these Pokemon. Zapdos, for example, would be annoying, but if it kept its ability, it could have been a enormous threat. And it's fine, yeah, it doesn't have its ability anymore, but, you know, the coverage is still good. That's something I realized. Flying Fire coverage offensively is really good. Now, defensively, the typing is a little lacking, and it's nice when it had Priority Roost because, like, weaker Volt Switch, T-Bolts, all that stuff, you know, it just does less and less. Talonflame was even able to set up on some weaker Scalds, like Starmie Scald. Nowadays, you can't really do that because there's no priority. But we can look through some of the teams in OU right now. Let me go back to some of my standard teams just to see how Talonflame would really match up. So I'll go to some of more fun teams, but some of my more standard teams nonetheless. So you can see, let's look at this team for example. So this team in general, the Talonflame matchup is what? It's not too bad for this team, but a scenario could happen in which Talonflame puts in work. As you can see, the Scarf versus Greninja, right? Greninja cannot switch into Talonflame. Brave Bird will do a lot. Z Brave Bird will kill. He can go into Tapu Lele to bait the Z Brave Bird, but, you know, that thing can't take a Flare Blitz or whatever, and it's also slower. You can see everything is slower except for Alakazam and Greninja. Landorus T probably takes a ton. I don't think it dies from +2 Z Fly, but what if you lure that in, weaken it for a Pokemon in the back? So you can see versus a classic offense like this, these are 6 of the most used Pokemon in the metagame, 6 of the best offensive threats, like, period. And you can see Talonflame could potentially do some work versus this. It could scare out Kartana with the threat. It can kill the weakened Lele. The Landorus T here is completely walled. I mean, it can U-turn out though and go into one of its faster Pokemon, which is definitely true. But yeah, you can see where its coverage moves could come into play here. Meanwhile, there are some matchups where it's likely that it'll do very little. Like this matchup, for example, would prove to be pretty difficult. Well, actually, this is actually a pretty good matchup, honestly. If you're able to lure in and kill the Slowbro, this Slowbro is Spadef too, so it's more likely to die to Z-Fly. And then you just somehow get rid of the T-Tar. But the other guys, you know, it's interesting. It's hard to justify using Talonflame, of course, because for one, we know that it's kind of a gimmicky mon. It's a 4-fun kind of hyper-offensive pick. But the problem is that it's 4 times weak to Stealth Rock, and a lot of the time it suffers a lot of competition from Tornadus as a flying type, and a Pokemon that's using offensive flying moves. Most times people use Rocky Helmet Tornadus, but if you want to go the offensive flying type route, Z Fly Tornadus is really good. And a lot of the times you'd rather just use that than Talonflame. It's much more consistent and it's much more likely to actually get off kills with its Z move. Meanwhile, Talonflame using Z Brave Bird, you know, there's a lot of things that just take nothing from that. Like a Z Hurricane from Torn can do a decent amount to resist, but Z Brave Bird, I mean, they're kind of in the same ballpark, but Torn does have a decent amount of special attack, while Talonflame's base attack is 81, which is actually less than a Mungus, so you can understand what we're dealing with now. Like, this Mon's stats, it's hilarious. Like, this Mon's stats are absolutely terrible, besides the speed. Like, the defense is garbage. The attack stat is so bad. In what metagame does base 81 attack work? Like, bro, maybe in fucking Gen 2. This doesn't work anymore. We got Pheromosa and stuff like that. Well, I mean, it's banned, but you know what I mean. We got Pokemon with 130, 150 base attack stats. We got Mega Alakazam and Kartana. You telling me Kartana has base, what, 161 attack? That's double this thing's attack, bro. What? Like, it's hard for Talonflame to keep up in today's metagame where it's just power over everything. And if you don't have power, you need to have another really good skill. You need to have really great bulk, or you need to have really great speed. Talonflame has the speed, but it's not enough because the bulk doesn't come with. It used to be okay, like I said, it used to be fine back in Gen 6 because even though it wasn't as bulky back then, you could go max Spadef, max HP, even max defense sometimes if you really needed it. I mean, physically defensive Talonflame was a lot less viable than Spadef, but that's not important. What I'm trying to say is, back then it was fine. You could get away with it because of the priority roost, and that was usually enough because you would get your priority roost on all these bulkier mons. Now, if you're not investing all the way in speed, well, look at this spread, for example. This is max speed Jolly, not even Adamant. If we go Adamant, we go down to 351 versus 386. That's a ton of stuff you miss. Tornadus, Greninja, well, regular Greninja, I mean. Tornadus T, Greninja, Superior, it just sucks. Like, you miss Weavile, you know, like, you don't want to miss all that stuff. And let's say you go no speed because you want to go bulky. Well, then you're at 288, which is extremely slow. Like, what is this thing outspeeding at this point? Heatran, random stuff like Gyarados, Mamoswine, but like, you know what I mean? At this point, you're losing a lot of speed. And you would think that, okay, let me put it into HP because then I can sort of retain some bulk. But in general, with Talonflame in this generation, you're trying to go like as balls deep as you can and just sweep. And Roost you want to keep mainly because there's no other option. Like, there's seriously no other option you could run. Because Flyanium Z is easily the best and the only one that's really worth it. Yeah, you could run like Will-O-Wisp or U-Turn or something, but at that point you might as well just run Roost and hope that, you know, you can Roost up on a Celesteela or a Tapu Bulu or something and then get Talonflame back in for another hit later on in the game. But even looking back at the viability rankings, it's very obvious that Talonflame faces a lot of competition from just other fire types in the tier. I mean, there's a lot of good fire types, which is funny. Back in Gen 6, there weren't a lot of good fire types. It was Heatran, it was Talon. That's it. No one was using Infernape or anything like that. I mean, that's like a gimmicky pick. But in Gen 7, you can see that there's a lot more fire types. Look, I go to OU, I put fire type, and there's a lot more. Look at this. These are all very viable picks. Literally, all 6 of these are extremely viable picks. And Talonflame's nowhere to be found. You do OU in BL or whatever. Okay, it doesn't matter. But you know what I'm saying, right? OU and fire types. You saw Heatran, Victini, the Charizards, Blasef, Volcarona, insane picks. And all of those have their own problems. Similar to Talonflame, all weak to water, weak to Stealth Rock and stuff. So it's very hard to justify using Talonflame. But regardless of that, Talonflame is always a fun Pokemon. Even if it is facing competition from stuff like Charizard X, Tornadus T, all that stuff, it's still cool. Still a clever pick. And of course, you know that Agent 00 La Flame, that live is coming. I'm gonna put the Travis Scott that lives in that live. It's gonna be crazy. But I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope this gave you guys a little information as to why Talonflame is not as good as it is anymore. I mean, obviously everyone's gonna put in the comments, ha ha, you could have just made a 2-second vid saying no Gale Wings, ha ha, and you're all gonna make the same comment. It's okay, I understand. But I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.